My name is Crystal Rugege. I'm the director of Carnegie Mellon University, Africa. We're based here in Kigali, Rwanda. I've been with the university for a little over 8 years, and I'm happy to meet you.
Oh, great. So could you just tell us what your role in the university and why Carnegie?
So as I mentioned, I've been with the university about 8 years. I've been in Kigali for 5.5. So I did my master's at Carnegie Mellon University, and I graduated in 2008. And soon after graduating, I met the Dean of Engineering, and he had just entered discussions with the government of Rwanda, actually, to bring a branch of the engineering campus to Kigali. And so he was looking for someone to kind of lead this effort and really bring it to fruition. And so I joined at that point to be a liaison between the government and the university, and also develop the framework for how we would engage with the government. So I stayed in Pittsburgh for about 3 years until we signed the agreement, negotiated the contract, signed the agreement with the government, and then I moved here in 2011. So I moved here to start the campus. My role is really overseeing everything non-academic. So I'm the director of strategy and operations, making sure the business runs well, as the university as a business, but also in terms of our strategic expansion, in terms of growing the program, numbers, diversity, partnerships, and all of that that it encompasses.
Okay, thank you. So based on strategic expansion, could you just tell me what's the vision for Carnegie Mellon University here, in line with the Smart Africa conference which you just finished today?
Yeah, I attended the previous 2 Transform Africas, and I can say I feel that the summit has really come to kind of a certain climax in terms of engagement with all of the different African governments. Deals were made, multi-million-dollar deals. They were able to bring several countries on board in terms of bringing the Smart Africa Alliance to kind of a larger body, including Tunisia, Sao Tome, Nigeria is also in the pipeline, as well as Zambia. And so I really see the summit just becoming bigger and better, and it's on an upward trajectory.
So we had a lot of seminars about digital, including the Miss Geek, the one with the First Lady.
Miss Geek.
Yeah. So what do you think this conference has done for women as in line with technology and empowering them?
So I think there's always been some kind of gender focus within the previous conferences, but I think one of the big outcomes for me with this was having this declaration put in place and having ministers of gender, ministers of ICT, first ladies and heads of state endorse this declaration around the key factors that will help address this issue of digital inclusion. But also something that that came out in the leaders panel yesterday with all of the heads of state. That panel wasn't specifically focused on gender digital divide, but I think President Kagame actually framed it very well when he said that the issue of digital inclusion or exclusion is not even an issue of technology, it's an issue of politics, and really putting the right policies in place at the very low levels, and even a culture change, in terms of the way that we think of the girl child from the time that she's 5 years old as she comes into adolescence, and making sure that she is able to focus on her studies to really see her full potential, rather than giving her an unfair burden of chores, versus her brothers. And so I think that conversation of digital inclusion when it comes to women is much deeper than just bringing women online, but really kind of a change in the mindset, a change in policy.
I've heard so much about a new model of education from CMU. So what is really this new model of education that Rwandans and Africans cannot see anywhere else?
Yeah. So one thing that's I think extremely unique about our program, you don't have there are lots you'll hear about lots of international partnerships or schools coming from abroad to set up some form of a partnership with local institutions. But Carnegie Mellon has been a leader in the discipline of technology and engineering for years and years. We're number one in computer science, number four in engineering, and so and even if we look at the track record of our graduates and our faculty in terms of research output and startups, there's kind of a clear case to be made for the quality of education that we can provide. Now, being able to bring that into the African context is what is a new model. So by bringing faculty on the ground full-time, it's not like they're coming, to visit, to teach a course and going back, but they're living here full-time. So what that means is, when they're studying, when they're researching energy problems, and they know the reasons that power goes out in the middle of a class, it now changes their thinking in terms of how they can orient the discourse that's happening in the classroom and the direction of their research now that they have that firsthand information, and also being able to engage with students on the ground that are completely familiar with this context because this is what they've known, their entire life. There's no learning curve in terms of now trying to understand the cultural nuances about why mobile money is not yet interoperable even within one country or across the continent.
We heard so much in the conference about bridging the gap. So Africa trying to bridge the gap between the Western world and more developed nations. How do you believe CMU as a university can actually bridge that gap across Africa, meaning the continent being, the pivotal part of bridging that gap? What do you feel CMU can step in to do that?
Sure. So a question we often have when we go to other countries to recruit students, let's say when we go to Kenya or when we've gone to Nigeria, they say, oh, when are you going to bring a CMU campus here so we can also access this? So our model is not to set up campuses in every country of the world or every country on the continent, but it's really now that we have this infrastructure in place, thanks to the government of Rwanda and the African Development Bank and some of the key partners that were able to bring this initial infrastructure here and set up the operations, is really to now invite the rest of the continent to Kigali to take advantage of this education and return home if that's what they wish to do, to now launch their businesses or take up jobs back home. Or we've had actually a number of our graduates that are not from Rwanda actually take jobs here or start their businesses here because it's a really enabling environment for young entrepreneurs.
If people from outside Rwanda want to take advantage of CMU program, how do they go about it?
Sure. So the hardest step is just to get admission. And so, our application is online. We have quite a rigorous process, looking at your transcripts, kind of your vision for what you want to do with your master's degree afterwards. And then some of the kind of standard admissions tests like the GRE and TOEFL and so on. But once you get through that hurdle and you've actually been admitted, which is the biggest hurdle, we have a number of funding sources in place to help finance education for both Rwandan students and international students. And so actually one of the reasons we're a partner of the Transform Africa Summit is because Smart Africa, the host of the conference, has set up a scholarship fund. And that scholarship fund was actually a direct recommendation that came out of the 2013 summit. Okay. So they said, okay, we know that we need to build this critical capacity of highly qualified engineers, but how do we get them access to that education? Since CMU is here, why don't we support them through a fund? So far, we've had 17 students sponsored under that fund, and we also have a number of other students that are sponsored through some of our other donors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will be happy to hear that it's possible. So you said you have a Nigerian student. Could you just tell us about him and let us know more about that?
So August 2015, we actually welcomed our first group of West African students. one Nigerian being among them. Victor, he's here with me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll let him introduce himself.
My name is Victor Akinwande, and I'm a Master's of Information Technology student at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm from Nigeria, and I finished from University of Ilorin, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science.
Oh, great, Victor. Nice to meet you. So I want to ask, how have you found your stay here in Rwanda? Because it's completely different from West Africa. You're not in Ghana, you're not in Sierra Leone, so you're living your. How has it been, just to tell me?
Short answer, I think the big difference has just been the food, but generally.
Not enough pepper.
Yeah, not enough pepper. But generally, I think Rwanda is a very fantastic place to be in. I mean, it's safe, and the people are really, really nice. And the environment, the whole academic environment itself has been fantastic. The average time that a CMU student leaves CMU campus to go home is 1 a.m. Right? In some cities in Africa, you cannot try that because like the cities are not safe. Kigali is extremely safe. Everywhere you turn, you see security personnel, and you can walk even the middle of the night when there's no one on the road without any fear of armed robbery or anything. I think this is not just something that's coming from me. Even international bodies recognize this. And very recently, in the ease of doing business rankings, Rwanda was just right up there. And I think security is one of the reasons that Rwanda is stopping those ranks. Just like any other American university graduate application process, I filled the online forms, I took the examinations. I think it might just be a little unique how I found out. Okay. I was my final year, and I was just discussing randomly with a senior colleague, and he mentioned Carnegie Mellon University in Rwanda. At that time, I was already looking at an American university for my graduate studies, and I was really excited about the opportunity because it's the same kind of education that you get, the same degree, the same caliber of faculty, and I just felt this is a dream come true. And the application was online. The certificate, the standardized tests were done, GRE, TOEFL, and I just crossed my fingers and I got the application.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, in your degree, I want to ask, where do you see yourself? You have a top Facebook for developers. Do you see yourself working for Facebook, or you just love Facebook? Or where do you see yourself in future in tech?
I think where I see myself is I see myself being a thought leader in the industry. I see myself really leveraging technology to drive social change, to impact the society, because I think beyond, I mean, technology in of itself is not something really valuable. It's what technology can really do that is of more value to me as a person.
So based on your answer, so I want you to narrow it down. I think it's easy to say we want to make changes, we want to see improvement. So in what sector, in what areas do you feel, okay, in Nigeria or in Rwanda or Uganda, nations you feel, okay, this problem I feel in the next few years could be reduced based on what I have gained here or taking it to the whole world?
Okay, so there are two things I've mentioned. First is education. So while I was in Nigeria doing my National Youth Service, I served in Sokoto State, and I was a secondary school teacher. I taught mathematics and computer science. The state of the school that I taught in and the state of students was really, really sad. It was extremely terrible, and it just went to show how terrible our educational state has gotten to, and I really, really took it to heart. And personally, I think one of the areas I'll devote a lot of my resources and a lot of my knowledge, skills to in Africa is education sector. I think technology has a huge role to play in the education sector. And the other one is in the energy sector. As we know, electrification in Africa is still nothing to write home about. And right here in CME, I'm actually doing a combined concentration. I'm doing the data science concentration. I'm also doing the energy systems concentration. So I've taken a number of courses in sustainable energy and energy efficiency. And the whole idea is to be able to build the capacity to create something, to build something, to solve energy problems that we face on the continent. And I'm really excited for the future.
Last question for you. Could you explain the cost of living, how the cost of living here as a student for someone who wants to come to the school?
Kigali is slightly more expensive than living in Lagos, and for my colleagues who are from Kenya, from Uganda, they also say it's more expensive than living in places like Kampala and Nairobi. But that said, I don't think the cost of living is something that would prohibit a student from being here. I think the entire ecosystem, the country as a whole, sort of like makes up for the slightly increased cost of living. The security that you get, the ecosystem that drives, that inspires innovation, the support from the government, and things like that. So I think it all adds up in the end.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, and you living outside, do you think this is possible?
This model?
Yeah, this model is possible across Africa. This model of trying to make Africa a smart continent.
Oh, yeah, I'm completely optimistic about that. I think this is Africa's time. I really do believe that. I don't think that that's just rhetoric, but I think that there are clear indicators that that is the direction that it's going. Okay. I think, one, as the quality of education improves and we have more young people engaged online, access to information, in control of their potential and exposed to the opportunities that are out there, I think that will just naturally take place. I also think, like in the political sphere, there's a clear kind of pivot in terms of the dependence on aid and kind of them following in step with the direction of what the West is telling them to do. So I see kind of this collaboration amongst heads of state, at the African Union level, at the Smart Africa level, really coming together to really define what the next 20 years will be, and also young people being really engaged to drive that discussion and really take ownership and take over in the next couple of years. So I'm very optimistic about that.
Okay, thank you very much. So if students in Africa wants to apply to you, to CMU, how do we go about it?
www.cmu.edu/Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. It's great talking to you.
Thank you.
Likewise, Victor.
Yeah.